Well, hello. Jonathan Kirschner here. I'm the founder and CEO of AIIR Consulting, and this is a podcast about leadership. And I'm here with Joy Nissen and Ian Wilcox, and we can't wait to talk today about a topic that is very dear to all of us, and that is, let's take a guess. What's the common denominator between Ian, Joy, and Jonathan? A little bit of psychology,
Yeah.
a
Right.
little bit of business psychology,
Business psychology.
but even deeper at the core, psychology, right?
Right.
I've been talking a lot with clients, with leaders and executives about this difference between where we are right now and where we were when it comes to this topic of change. Mm-hmm. And Ian, I'll be very curious to get your perspective on this, given that you've been in this industry and field for some time. But it feels like we've gone from a place where change happened in an episodic way, right? Where we're like, let's do a change, or something has changed in the external environment and we have to adapt and then essentially find our footing, and then we achieve a new normalcy. Mm-hmm. And it seems that like the frequency of which those changes were occurring and maybe the magnitude have increased maybe over the past 20, 30 years, maybe as a function of innovation, industry, globalization, all these dynamics. But something seems to have occurred. It's not been this discontinuous moment. There's certainly a continuum, but something does seem to be qualitatively different between that phase of change and where we are now, where it seems like change is just not just constant, but fluid. Mm-hmm. And so given that context that we're in, I want to really dig into how do we not just survive and stay afloat, but how do we thrive as humans, as leaders in this context. And so today we have Joy, of course, my sidekick, Joy, who's our head of leadership solutions at AIIR Consulting, and a clinical and organizational psychologist, a biofeedback expert, and then Ian, who has an incredible career in management consulting, trained at Columbia in the depths of psychology.
Thank you.
From all the wonderful scions of psychology at Columbia, worked at the Hay Group, and does many things, including investing in private equity. And we have the privilege of having Ian on our advisory board at AIIR Consulting. So it's just so wonderful to have you both here. And given that context, what are some of the first things that come to mind for you? So maybe Ian, we'll just start with you, since you've been around for a time when change was really happening. Was very intentional.
Yeah. In listening to you, I remember, this is going back a ways now, we used to talk about programs that were entitled Managing Change. Mm-hmm. So that gives you a sense of perspective. Now I don't think it's about managing change, as you said, Jonathan. It's part of our being, right? And I think about clients where there was this is back in the days when there were binders and there was hard copy, right? And we would, at Hay Group and other places that I worked, we would talk about change as something that was almost an event. Mm-hmm. And we needed to come in and train you or in some way prepare you for it. And then status quo would arrive. Yeah. Well, just think about that. Think about that from what that was to what it is now, right? We would come in and apply those good behavioral science principles of mindset shift, the skills, resistance, all the various models that we know around change, resistance to change, right? I can remember years and years ago, there was Gary Bridges and there were the curves. And Joy, you probably know what I'm getting at, to talk about where we are, and we talk about change curves, and we talk about kind of add in a model like Elizabeth Kubler-Ross model of grief in that. Yeah. And then we'd work through the psychological and the kind of the cognitive steps. And then we'd kind of put it in a box and we'd say, okay, done. Mm-hmm. Now let's think about that for a second. Think about the fact that one of my favorite words is compartmentalization. We compartmentalize that. Mm-hmm. And we'd leave our clients with that sense of, it's okay now.
Yeah.
right? Like that's my reflection, is we'd kind of pat them on the back and say, yeah, you might do another M&A or whatnot, but this world as we know it, I mean, some people call it VUCA, whatever terminology or acronym you want to apply to it. There was a period where I think we thought that status quo, there was something about returning to I guess the word might be homeostasis, to apply to you, Joy. Yeah. And I don't think that's clearly not true anymore, right? What's your feeling, Joy?
Yeah, I mean, there's so much good meat in what you just shared, Ian, and I think what's coming up for me is just this sense of control and stability is something that humans have always craved, and we yearn for that. And we don't feel good when we feel like we're not in control. We don't know what's coming next. We don't have a systematic way of understanding our world, our environment, what's coming next. And I think you're both touching on this really important notion that in the past, change was an event, and we are wired to respond appropriately to activation. That's not inherently bad. We can do that. We know what to do, but we need the recovery. We need that rest. We can't just stay in this constant state of activation for prolonged periods of time. So in this world we have now, where it feels like change, and we don't know what we're changing towards, so it's change without a destination. And I think that sort of uncertainty and almost like dissonance that people are left with is what a lot of leaders we talk to are experiencing, of just how can I even plan for the future when the future feels unknown, and it feels like I make a plan and 3 months down the road the world is a completely different place and I have to throw my plan out the window. So I'd love to hear.
What resonates for me in that is fatigue.
Yep.
Fatigue.
Wait, it's exhausting.
It's exactly, Jonathan. There's an exhaustion mentally and emotionally that I think clients are going through. Leaders are clearly, we know the statistics that are out there about the tenure, average tenure in a CEO or even a C-suite role these days, right? And that fatigue, I remember some client saying to me, when does this end?
Right.
Well, depending on what, it doesn't end. It's more about the mindset and the conditioning to think about it.
Well, Ian, in the traditional paradigm, it would have an end. A change would have a beginning.
A beginning and
an announcement.
Yeah, exactly.
A communicating of why.
Right.
A managing of the resistance. And a reinforcement phase.
Right.
And so there's a beginning, there's a middle, there's an end.
Right. And then a period of homeostasis or stability.
We used to hand out to clients that Harvard Business Review article by John Cotter.
Classic.
Yeah.
Right? Managing a Change. And I go back to that now and then. I thought, that article, great article, but it exemplifies exactly that idea that it was an event, and here's an article, and here's how we communicate it, beginning, midpoint, and end. Cotter's article really, to your point, Jonathan, underscored that mindset. Something's changed, though. We're living continuously in the Cotter articles. That's what our clients are telling us right now.
So there's fluid change, and then Joy, you mentioned something that was really intriguing to me, is that it's change but without a direction per se, right? So I think there's sort of like two variables. It's the fluidity in which we're changing. So there's not like a beginning, middle, and end. And then there's just like a degree of uncertainty when you don't know what you're changing towards because it's happening so frequently. And yet the brain it kind of defies how we're wired in some ways, right? The brain, as we were chatting about earlier, is like kind of designed to achieve a locus of control. Like we need to feel a sense of control and predictability in our lives, and that allows us to, kind of stay above it and to
feel
self-manage, feel safe,
feel safe, exactly,
feel safe,
and to thrive. So, what do we do? Given that the conditions for how we're essentially designed are suboptimal. What are some things we need to be thinking about? Let's start with just humans, and then we'll move to leadership. But just as humans, what do we need to be thinking and doing? What kind of mindsets do we need to maybe shift towards? What kind of behaviors do we need to be adopting? Because if we use these change models or some of these older paradigms to try to live in the now, I think we're going to be somewhat limited.
Yeah. And I would argue there's a false distinction between what it means to be a human and what it means to be a leader. I think,
Yeah, that's
I think
a good point.
Okay, I'll take that challenge.
I would agree. I would agree with you, Joy. Absolutely.
Yeah,
One and the same.
Yeah. I think especially nowadays, to be a good leader, you have to really know what your humanity requires of you and what's needed to succeed. And if you're not attuned to yourself and your personal needs, and you're not cultivating that sense of resilience and attunement with your mindset, your fatigue, like when are you as a leader or as a person pushing yourself past the point of effectiveness to be able to then harness what the organization needs? If you don't have individual resilience, you're not going to have organizational resilience.
Right.
So I think we have to go back to our humanity and anchor to some of those core traits that we all need for survival in general to then be able to translate that to organizational survival.
Yeah, the words that come to my mind, equanimity, one of my favorite words, calm, right? And what that invokes for me, or evokes rather, is that both the biological sense, like how are we listening to our body? So that's a humanity and an attribute that I think good leaders have, is they know, back to compartmentalization, good leaders know and understand that this may be the status quo, and probably is. And therefore, what is required of me, both as a human and as a leader, to demonstrate that sense, as you put it, of resilience. And that resilience may well be how I show up, how I compartmentalize. I remember my secretary giving me a piece of feedback early on in my career. And she said to me, I was sitting in my office not far from here, and I was literally kind of having that moment when I was frustrated and pulling my hair out. And it's really interesting that the people who give you some of the most thoughtful feedback as leaders are those that you wouldn't expect. And Rose came into my office. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. I'll never forget. And she said, "How do you think it looks when people are walking by your office and seeing you literally pull at your hair?"
Wow.
And I took that as probably one of the greatest coaching moments when I was stepping into my first leadership role in a large consultancy. And it taught me something that I needed to hear about compartmentalization and about the fact that what may be going on for me, how does that translate out there? Right? What does that look like? And it said I need to do some work. My own work in managing it, body-wise, literally not pulling my hair out, not looking like I'm pulling my hair out. But there was something in that I stepped back and said, biofeedback, right? Which what is it that I need to do so that I, as a leader, show up in a way that embodies that sense of equanimity. Right? So that's a whole other skill set. It was not an intellectual skill set that I was prepared for. It was a different skill set that I needed to acquire to get that team that I was leading and the task in front of me to orchestrate that sense of this is the new way to operate.
Yeah, that's so powerful too. And I think in biofeedback we talk a lot about regulation and co-regulation. So as a leader, you are setting the tone in a lot of ways for the people you lead, the environment at the office, the people that you work with. If you're distressed, that makes the system distressed. So if you're not able to bounce back and recover and be attuned with your needs and physiologically calm yourself, that's going to translate to the people around you and lead to stress in the system. So it all starts from the individual, because that has that multiplier effect, which is why I think we're all drawn to this work, is because of that cascade effect, that working with a leader and helping them become more attuned with what they need to succeed and what that does to the organizational system around them.
Yeah, it sounds a lot like this concept of emotional contagion.
Right.
That we learn in social psychology.
Exactly.
But it's a really amazing point you made earlier, Joy, about that in some ways, like, the organization is simply just a reflection of the state of the individuals. And so if everybody is like just burnt out and stressed out, and, then the collective whole, the organization itself is, even though it might have a pretty logo and great website, it's a burnt out organization, and that organization is probably at risk of not fulfilling its mission.
And we know what that does physiologically to leave from a place of stress or a threat response. You will be shut down cognitively and emotionally from your team. You're not going to be able to access that creative, critical thinking part of your brain as easily. You're going to be thinking short term instead of long term. All of these things are antithetical to what we need to lead in uncertainty and thrive in the future. You
well, it
have
certainly
to be open.
compromises, all the things that happen in this prefrontal cortex. But Ian, we were talking earlier about cortisol and just prolonged
impact.
Doses of cortisol and what that can do to just your physical health. I mean, we're basically talking about the fight-flight response, aren't we? Right? And I think continuous exposure to that, cortisol sitting on the top of the kidneys and into the body, we know hypertension, type 2 diabetes, and we're talking about metabolic syndrome, right? And then we're talking about over a prolonged period of time, what do we know about that? That shows some degradation in our autoimmune systems. And autoimmune diseases are everything from unfortunately, all the way to cancer. And I think we have to step back and truly at this juncture that we're in, listen to our bodies as leaders and as humans far more than we may have done. What do we put into our body? This gets back to how much coffee do I drink, right? It's all of those things that are, I like the word that you said, Jonathan, that contagion effect, right? And leaders, I think, have to understand in the language they're using, what their body language, their verbal language, how they show up. All of that has that impact on the kind of culture they're creating. Right? And so what's different about leading in this environment, as I see it, is the task is far less intellectual, although there's important work to do around strategy and choices and whatnot. I could argue that it's going to be interesting with the amount of work that AI can do for us. Right? If you think about where I'm going, and from AI can construct my competitive strategy for us, and we can play with engineering prompts. But what AI can't do is what we're talking about. We can't do that human piece. Right?
Yeah, not yet at least.
Not yet at least, exactly.
I like to say to the leaders I work with, you want to be leading from a place of intention, not tension.
Yes.
And I think when you're operating from a place of stress or going so quickly that you're not slowing down to speed up, as Jonathan likes to say, you run the risk of just making decisions without thinking through the consequences or really thinking through all aspects of how you're showing up as a leader.
Well, this is a podcast about leadership.
It
is. I'm a leader, right? Let's take a leader, the average leader right now, traveling, burning the candle on both ends, not much sleep, and Slack messages, email, phone, WhatsApp, SMS.
Zoom, Teams.
Your kid who's using your phone, his TikTok notifications are coming through, and you've got a whole team, and they look concerned, and they're not getting the communication they need because you're fragmented and fried. And what do we recommend for this hypothetical leader? Like, where do we start? How does this person get a grip? Because I think that, would we say that that's an accurate depiction of, say, your average leader right now?
And the place that I start in any work I do with senior executives, I ask the question, draw for me urgent and important. So the things that you talked about, of those tools, from WhatsApp to Zoom to whatnot, they're tools, but are they managing you? Or are you managing them? Right? And so what I said to an executive, and an executive said to me, and gave a lot back to me recently, he said, Ian, what I've learned is to step back from all those toys and distractions and just focus like laser sharp. Like he said, I don't use Slack anymore. I don't use any of these things. I focus just on the things that are the most critical. And this is coming from an executive who is right now looking at trading 50, 60, 70% below market cap, trading below cash, right? And is just really focused on the prize of what the organization and its purpose is that I'm not distracted by that. But that skill set that I'm describing is one that is not, I think, is pervasive and it's hard to really develop in others. Because we do get distracted. We do get focused on things that I think fundamentally take us away from the task. So I ask 3 things: what's urgent, what's important, and right now, what is the task? What is the task? And you'd be surprised when people step back, how they're able to see, is this task really about responding to what's happened to Zoom? And I think helping clients segment those things is quite informative. Yeah, that's been my experience.
So, like prioritization.
It's a prioritization exercise, yes, and also kind of stepping back and saying, "Do you really believe you need to touch all those things?" Right?
Yeah. Sounds like you're really getting at the concept of like mindfulness too, like being intentional about where you're spending your time, what's actually a priority. I think we've been almost conditioned to be hyper responsive. If somebody pings us or slacks us or emails us, we feel compelled to respond right away, and that pulls us from that deeper focused work. And if we don't have clear boundaries around focus time, it's easy to get pulled by all these other devices and mechanisms.
And part of the equanimity that I'm seeing in folks that are developing this skill set is they're okay with letting some things fall by the wayside. They're okay with the feedback that may be from whomever you didn't respond in 24 hours. And then they're able to address why, but they're recognizing some things will fall through the cracks, and I am comfortable with the anger or frustration response that will accompany that. That's a mature response. It's not rather than getting angry about the fact that I need to respond. There's that sense of let me just step back and be purposeful. You know, like the word you used, intentional around that.
Yeah.
So I've got prioritization.
Yeah.
We didn't call it something, but I think we're all in agreement that we need to regulate.
Yes.
Right? There's something about our psychobiology that, you know, it just can't be 80% cortisol, 20% like serotonin and other stuff. Right?
Yeah.
We need to bring balance and regulation to our biology. And then Joy mentioned mindfulness, which, you know, could also be thought of as a heightened awareness of oneself, so that you can make decisions like you just shared, Ian. Like I can say, you know what, that is annoying, but I accept it.
Right.
And I'm at peace with it. Right.
Exactly.
Instead of immediately reacting and treating this mouse the same way that you would treat a lion in front of you, which can happen. That distortion effect happens when you're living in your amygdala, the center of our brain that is all responsible for emotion activation, fight, flight.
It's a fight, flight. Exactly.
Yeah, and mindfulness, the way I describe it to clients, is really the commitment to being present. So it's, what do I need to focus on? Back to your point, Ian, of what's the task at hand? What am I trying to accomplish? What's urgent? What's important? What am I being called to do, and how can I show up as the best version of myself as a leader in this moment, and not get pulled into the side pings on a message or something else that's maybe calling to you that isn't the task at hand. So it's, how can you actually stay present, because we have so many competing priorities and competing distractions that will come our way if we're not focused.
Right, exactly.
I love this. I mean, to me, a lot of this, if not all of it, falls under this bucket. I'm like the irony that I'm seeing us do this in real time, like put things in buckets. Us humans, like we love our
we need parsimony, right? We need categorization.
Otherwise, it's chaos.
It's how it works.
Exactly. We need to have cognitive. We need some way to reduce the cognitive load. I mean, a lot of what we've been talking about, and we've seen the research on this, the cognitive load.
Yeah.
It's the cognitive load. So I'm putting all that cognitive load in a bucket called self-management. Right. And we know about leadership that is a major part of leading, because if you don't have the energy reservoirs in place for yourself, how are you possibly going to lead others, both by actually leading others and being an example, which is part of leadership, as we talked about initially. But there's two other buckets in this art and science of leadership. The second being leading others, and the third being leading the organization. And I'm curious. So we've talked about really being mindful and present. We've talked about physiological regulation, and how we can use the gift of our brain to prioritize as being essential areas for us to be focused on as leaders right now. When it comes to leading others, how do we lead others right now effectively? When everybody is experiencing some of these vulnerabilities that we've described.
I think a lot of it is naming what's going on for folks, like creating
not
the language, right? Not pretending
nothing's happening,
right? And creating the language for people to process and understand what's happening.
Yes,
I think a lot of times that rumination or anxiety comes into play when we don't know how to articulate what's going on, and it's just this feeling of heaviness that we're sitting with. So,
I just want to add to that naming allows us not only to put it in a category, implied in that is empathy. I think but by naming it, it validates, and then I think effective leaders do something in addition to naming, which is the way in which they name somehow touches what this psychological experience. Is it alienation? Is it overwhelm? What is that? And by the virtue of the naming, I'm not naming what I am experiencing as a leader, but I'm showing the otherness. And then in that naming, I understand the shared experience of my team / direct reports. And that serves as a container, using a psychological concept, go with me. It's a container, right? Right? You're laughing, right? Because it is.
Yeah, what kind of container?
Exactly. But you know where I'm going.
Self-psychologist.
Right,
and,
right. But it's exactly. But it's a container that allows the space to be created.
Yeah.
But I'm doing that. And by naming, so it is leader as therapist, sort of. But that's an okay thing.
Yeah.
Because then that touches what you're doing for me in that moment as a leader is like, you've got my attention. I feel that I am heard. Heard in a very deep and profound way.
So a leader needs to be able to create the space, right? Or like the container, but then has to be able to name things. What comes up for me is like communication.
Yeah.
Right. Communication's always been important, is important, always will be important. Right? There's nothing new under the sun. Yet, and we see this in our own data at AIIR. We see that, when individuals are getting coached, they create a development plan, and we're able to see the aggregate data of those development plans, and communication out of the 45 skills we track is always trending in the top 3. And right now it's I think it's number 1 or number 2 right now.
Yeah, here's the irony. You just mentioned these various tools, Jonathan. They are supposedly communication tools. WhatsApp, Zoom, Teams, email.
Inundation tools.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But then I wonder what is, when we get that feedback about communication, I think it comes back to what you said, Joy. It's the kind and nature of communication that makes the difference. Because all this other noise that's out there from Slack on down, I think what we're hearing in engagement surveys and others is like, stop it.
It's just adding to cognitive overload.
You're adding to cognitive overload. And it's not. Ironically, if you have AI do a content analysis on the value add of those channels, and I would argue, marginal, right? Because what is it that I really want in terms of communication? I want connectedness with you as my manager. Right? I want
clarity.
And clarity,
Yeah,
right?
clarity.
Exactly.
Well, so I've got creating the space, right? Acknowledging, when times are hard, rather than just trying to, guys, heads down, just
chug forward.
Chug forward. Come on, trudge through this.
Yeah, just buckle down.
And communication, the empathic aspects of communication, the connectivity that communication can create, and the clarity that it can engender. being really important areas. I would argue, we would all argue that these have always been important, but I think especially right now, in a time where we're in fluid change, this is particularly important.
You add in all of the evolution in front of us of AI, coupled with everything else that's going on, right? We think about where we started, which is something that people long for, which is what it was, something very certain, concrete. We as leaders need to acknowledge we're now on a journey of continuous evolution and change. That even that word change, I don't know, maybe there's a different word that we need to come up with.
I think it's uncertainty.
It's uncertainty, right? And we're talking about ways that we engage, not even, I would say communicate, but connect. I think implied in what we're talking about is a way of connecting, because all those other communication tools are essentially sharing of information.
Right. And it's very ironic that in this age of ultra hyper connectedness,
we're not connected.
There's a loneliness epidemic. People feel disconnected. There's a breakdown in community, a breakdown in societal structure, and people don't know where to turn and what to anchor to. And I think that's where leadership really comes into play, of how do we make people feel like they're part of something bigger than themselves, that they're part of something that matters, that their life has purpose and is value driven. And there's less spaces to find that, and it becomes more and more, I guess, on the leader to create that for their
sense
teams.
of purpose.
Yeah,
I mean, ask yourself, guys, how many quote unquote friends do you have on Facebook?
Too many.
And then
how many do you actually know or talk to?
And are they friends?
Are they your friends?
Are they people you're connected to? Right? And I think that speaks to what you said in terms of what we've got, all these tools, we've got all this technology, we've got 3,000-4,000 friends or people we connect to. Are we really connected to them?
No.
Well, to your point, I think people are coming into the workplace feeling more lonely than they've been. We have to somehow basically entice them to come into the office 3-4 days a week and use food and whatever else. But I think this is true, to get people to come into the office to experience a sense of community.
I love this fostering community and connection, and that being, a leadership quality, if not responsibility.
Yes.
I think that's essential right now. And I also think, there's an element that we're talking about separating signal from noise, right?
Exactly.
I think we conflate information with communication.
Right.
Communication is the essential signal. Information, there's aspects of it that's really important, but they can become easily conflated. And by the way, when I can produce, I did this the other day. I created, I did a deep search query using one of the LLMs. And I created a research paper in 4 minutes, right? That's longer than using, a regular search. This was a deep search. But now all of a sudden, I've got this 30-page document, and it took me 4 minutes to create it. I got to eat dinner and do other things. Now I'm sitting on this, and I think AI has this ability to just further proliferate the amount of information that we're already sort of swimming in and inundated by.
That proliferation, again, I come back to the theory of cognitive overload. Yeah. That's the interesting quandary we're in, is we've got all these tools, and the cognitive overload, particularly how do we manage the desire to go in and just dive at it, right? It's actually not, again, it's the challenge of the urgent versus the important.
Right.
Well, that third bucket is leading the organization. So we have leading self, and that's all that self-management aspects that we were talking about. Then we have leading others, and we talked about communication, creating the space, creating community and connection. When it comes to leading others, right? When I think about the skills under that bucket, it's establishing a clear and compelling vision, a strategy to enact that vision, managing that strategy, executing on that strategy, building a culture that can support that strategy. Where are our organizations and leaders specifically struggling right now in that domain?
I think it's just so unpredictable. How are you to, leaders historically have been rewarded for their ability to almost see the future.
Like to break out their crystal ball and
to
tell
plan
everybody and tell
what's
analysts
happening in 3 years or 5 years.
Here's what we see in Q4.
And that's impossible now. So how are you supposed to create a strategic vision when we don't know what AI disruption is going to look like in 6 months? So I think it does come back to some of these like core skills of being curious, being resilient, being flexible, knowing how to adapt, and creating a vision that allows for variance, that isn't too rigid and rooted in one clear path, because that one clear path isn't as clear as it historically has been.
Well, what's really interesting to me in what you just shared is when we think about the definition of leadership, which according to AIR, leadership is actualizing a clear and compelling vision through others.
Yeah.
What happens when that vision is a little hazy, right? I think about Google. Like, imagine you're Google right now, and the last decade plus, you've made hand over fist money while you sleep, a money tree on search, and now all of a sudden, every LLM can do a search.
Can do it for you. Yeah.
Right? So
maybe even better.
Right. So how does that affect vision? And I think there's something about adaptability and experimentation mindset that organizational leaders need to increasingly adopt as a function of uncertainty and all the curveballs that can come at us. But the sort of below that is purpose.
Yeah.
And purpose doesn't change. Like Google's purpose, which is, I don't know what, to make information accessible. I don't know their purpose. But that is evergreen, right? And so to double down, triple down on articulating that and reinforcing that and making sure that people are grounded
in the why.
In the why. That transcends the what the strategy is in this point in time, because that can change very fast.
Yes, and I think because the goalpost keeps moving, as a function of technology. For example, you just gave a really good example of Google, but now what is AI doing to disintermediate what we knew search to be? The task for the leader or leaders in an organization is to be on top of that and articulating. And I know that AI or Claude or Perplexity is coming down the pike and having not an answer, but acknowledging it to what it is and coming back to purpose. And I think part of curating and taking care of the organization and its culture is not to ignore, but to create an environment of continuous improvement. And I use that intentionally around saying, you're right, we're going to have to be up on our game because Claude and Perplexity and Grok and ChatGPT are at our coattails. And creating an organizational system that is agile and adapting and able to work with that. Right? And you as the leader stepping in and saying, yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it speaks to a level of humility that leadership needs to have as well. Like not assuming that what got you here won't get you there.
Yeah,
and so what are the conditions we need to create in organizations to make sure that innovation is at the center of the work? You're grounded in the purpose, but you're not stagnating. You're not arrogant enough to believe that you're at the top of your game, you're an industry leader, and you're just going to sit pretty for the rest of time. Like you have to be constantly pushing and challenging and being attuned with the environment and the changing realities.
Totally. Well, I know we're coming up on time with this segment, and this has been a fantastic conversation. We've covered leading self, leading others, leading the organization, all within this interesting, challenging context that we find ourselves in. It was really wonderful to be together, and thank you, Ian, for joining us.
Thank you.
And this is a podcast about leadership, so I hope you all have gotten some really good nuggets, if not profound insights, that can help inform and guide your own leadership. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.